Good evening. This is Rudy Giuliani. This is America's Mayor live from Palm Beach. Well, we're going to start with, and we don't usually do this, we're going to start with the market because everybody is concerned. Well, not everybody. Some people are concerned about the market, and some people are sophisticated and have been in this long enough to know that 1 day, 2 days, 3 days of the market doesn't mean anything. And if you overreact to it, you can really, really hurt yourself. For example, as I said earlier, if you sold stocks that were sensitive to Mexico 3 weeks ago because there was going to be a tariff, you now don't have a tariff, and you have America and Mexico celebrating what is described as one of the best relationships ever, which means everything you sold, you lost the advantage of how it came back, and you just lost the money. So I'm going to ask Stephen, who is an investor, when you look in a vacuum, you look at 1 day, 2 days, and you see the numbers there, the S&P down less than 1%, but 7/10, so more of 1%. The Dow Jones down 1%, 0.1. And NASDAQ really not down. NASDAQ insignificant, 0.18. What does it tell you?
Well, if we look at just the closings and how we did today, it feels like regular volatility. Investors are used to these swings. These are not particularly large swings. The real kind of panic came earlier when the market was down, but then we saw a lot of investors snap up those shares, like you said, buying it at somewhat of a discount. And it does really depend on what you think the outcome of the tariffs will actually be. So if people are betting on them just going into effect, that's one thing. And then some investors are anticipating some deal making and some agreements that might be beneficial to the economy. And a lot of it too doesn't necessarily even depend on policy. You know, a lot of this is just cash flows and money flows. So you can't put too much blame on anyone for the market. Typically, it's actually a fool's errand to kind of assign blame for the market. But yeah, I was not surprised by anything. If you looked at your portfolio today, you thought regular volatility.
Yeah, I mean, the Wall Street Journal, that is very often negative on Trump, particularly because of tariffs. Even they say that this is probably not really the tariffs. This is a correction that really has to get made because we had an unreal economy for a very, very long time with no interest rates, with the government pumping. I mean, we took the government budget in 4 years and we increased it by $3 trillion.
Oh yeah, and people are feeling wealthy if they're looking at their portfolios, even relative to just a few years ago. So everyone is still way up and feeling, you know, like they have a significant amount invested. Like we've enjoyed such strong gains that, yeah, we did need a little bit of a pare back, and prices are still high.
Yeah, and his strategy, if it works, and I mean, the things that are working take a while to make a difference. There are now, I think, 5 automobile companies that 2 have moved, 3 are considering moving their production from Mexico to the U.S.
Well, we covered Honda moving to Indiana, a planned investment.
Stellantis, who makes Chrysler now, right? They were going to close down a factory, I think, in Indiana. Instead, they're building a new one and keeping that one.
Yes, and actually, perhaps more significant, the Taiwan Semiconductor investment in Arizona
is massive,
and it's related to national security, and it's going to make everything more competitive, and all these things that are running on AI very useful and cheaper.
Well, I mean, a lot of these tariffs are multifaceted. And the idea that all of them are going to have an effect on the economy is just incorrect. And the reality is that some of them have a good effect on the economy. For example, the tariffs have now produced an increase in the number of businesses, the number of jobs. Now, that's
it takes a minute for that to permeate, right? So the jobs aren't going to come overnight, but it is more of a long-term view of things, which is how good leaders tend to think. Long-term economic gains for America.
Charlie Gasparino, who writes about the market, has been writing about the market for years and covered me when I was involved in the Boesky and Madoff cases and all the cases involving the markets in the 80s, said, think of the current U.S. economy as a junkie weaning himself off heroin, which is never easy.
But pretty apt, honestly. Speaking of Madoff, man, he fleeced a lot of people right around our studio here.
And the Wall Street Journal editorial, which is, as I said, very much obsessed on tariffs, basically says this would have happened with or without tariffs because of the long-term impact on the economy of the tremendous amount of spending that we're doing that has to regularize itself. And the real question is, are tariffs going to be the sole obsessive concern of his administration, or are they mostly tools to get to another place? And I would say it's the second, including reciprocal. If you can get to reciprocal tariffs, that should balance out.
And that's the definition of free trade right there. Free and fair.
So we'll see what's going to happen, but take a look at some of these firms. Honda and Hyundai have already made their decision and are moving. Stellantis is, I think, made the decision to keep the factory. They're going to move to Mexico in the United States and build another one. Volkswagen and Volvo Cars are looking at places in America to build a factory to avoid any possibility of a tariff. And as you said, Compal Electronics, the Taiwanese laptop maker, is going to invest in 5 different locations in the United States, Arizona and Texas being the 2 that have been decided on. LVMH, which makes Louis Vuitton and Dior, is considering and negotiating a move. The Italian liquor company Campari wants to be in the United States. The only one I don't know is Swedish tissue maker Essity, and they are negotiating to move and have a place in the United States. That is a tremendous amount of business, and that's the ones we know about. I mean, I don't know why they don't say, well, this guy did wonders for our economy last time. He obviously knows what he's doing. The people criticize him best thing I can say about them are theoreticians. They've never run a business. They've never done anything practical, and they're jealous as hell. So why don't they? I mean, he's got the best people around him. He knows his whole presidency rests on what he's going to do about the economy. I know what that's like. I knew my whole mayoralty rested on reducing crime, and there's no way I wasn't going to reduce crime. If I had to go out in the street and make the arrest myself, I would. If he has to fund some of these things himself, he will. So I don't think I would be as concerned. And I do think some of these things are working real fast. Look at these companies already investing in.
Well, and if we're talking domestic policy as well, President Trump is, first and foremost, he's a businessman, and he's trying to make it easier. And that's what we see across all these federal agencies is he's trying to make it easier for businesses to do business. And that's actually just substantively good for all these companies, which is therefore reflected in the market.
So big piece of news today, right? The United States now, it's amazing how it all changes in a week. Was it a week ago? Zelensky was getting his ass kicked out of the White House. He didn't want to make peace. He even announced ominously, this is going to be a long war. Now, according to our Secretary of State and the head of national security for the president, we have an agreement with the more recalcitrant Ukraine, and now the ball has been served into the Russian court. So tell us, Ted, shall we? Why don't you tell us what happened, and also let's see if we can put on a little. I think the secretary and the national security advisor did a good job of explaining it.
That's right, Mayor. So Secretary Rubio and the national security advisor were in Saudi Arabia today, and they have reached an agreement. Ukraine has agreed to a ceasefire proposal And as the Secretary of State put it, the ball is now in Russia's court. The Secretary and the National Security Advisor both speaking to reporters and making it very clear that that the decision now is up to Putin. So
yeah, I think there's a little confusion about where it came from. This originally was a proposal from Zelensky to America to have a ceasefire, and Zelensky has said that Walz and Rubio broadened it to a much bigger ceasefire, and he's going along with it. So it's going to be a 30-day, nobody shoots anybody. You stop the shooting. Now, the only reason I can see that Putin might try to delay it or fool around with it, I think this thing would have gone down like that a week ago. But in the interim, Putin has figured out maybe he can take Kursk back, and then he won't have to trade for it, because immediately upon getting that extra time, he's. I mean, last night was a terrible, terrible set of attacks. I mean, the Ukrainians attacked them, and they attacked the Ukrainians, and it seemed like they're playing for position. But that's okay. That's great, except they're killing people. And this war could have, the ceasefire came in a week ago, and all these people will be alive. Everybody dying right now. I'm sure President Trump is saying to himself, "Are you crazy? Just do the ceasefire. If you can't agree, go back and fight in a month or two." But what are you killing people for nothing now? Which has been going on for quite some time. You have some film on the attacks. They really were pretty, or on the secretary.
Yep, we have plenty of footage here. Let's start with some footage from the ongoing attacks in Ukraine. I just got a lot mumbling here. So this is some of the fighting happening right now in Kursk. Let's see if we can get this on here. So share the screen here. So we're gonna play some video. This right here, folks, what we're about to show you is fighting happening in Kursk.
So this is in Russia. Kursk is in Russia.
So this is just some footage of the fighting. Do you want me to? Should we go to your map?
No. Show them the pictures first.
This is just video. So okay, so I'll kind of narrate as we play the footage. Of course, the U.S. and Ukraine are calling for a 30-day ceasefire, subject to the acceptance of Russia. This following talks in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday. The U.S. will also immediately lift its pause on intelligence sharing and resume security assistance to Ukraine, both countries said in a statement. The U.S. and Ukraine took important steps towards restoring durable peace for the Ukraine. That's a quote from the statement. Again, the statement goes on to read, Ukraine expressed readiness to accept the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire, which can be extended by mutual agreement of the parties, and which is subject to acceptance and concurrent implementation by the Russian Federation. The United States will communicate to Russia that Russian reciprocity is the key to achieving peace. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, of course, who led the delegation to Jeddah today, said the ceasefire proposal will be delivered to Russia directly through multiple channels. Secretary Rubio said the offer is to stop the shooting. The goal here is the only way out to end this war is to negotiate out of it. There's no military solution to this war.
So I think we're watching Kursk right here.
Right.
This is the Russian. Shall we go to the map? I can show them where it is. I can show them what is at stake here. So Kursk is up here. Hold it. Kursk is up. You see where it says Russia? It's a little light. This map happens to be a little bit light, but it's a good map. We don't want to spoil it.
Is it an hour?
Let me just put this right here. We'll get it going just the right way.
Zoom in a little.
Come on, Dopey. Well, Kursk is up there, right there. There's Kursk, and that's where the fighting is taking place. That's in Russia. The line is here.
Off a little bit.
The line's here. That's the border. So you can see it's right over the border from Sumy, Ukraine, and from Kharkiv, the second largest city in Ukraine. And the Ukrainians took that about a year ago, very opportunistic and very smart. I always thought, and I imagine it's the case, to trade it. Since Russia had taken all of what you see there, they wanted to be able to say, we'll give you this back if you give us back. They've pretty much acknowledged that they're not going to get everything back. I know what they should get back. I don't know if they can get it back, and I don't know, given all of the peculiarities of Ukrainian corruption, I don't know what they put first. But from our point of view, the United States of America, if we have this deal with them for rare minerals, 2/3 of the rare minerals are in the Ukrainian now section of Ukraine, and 1/3 are in the Russian part. And that's all up here. It's all up there. So Russia's not going to give away the whole thing because they're not going to give away their road to Crimea. But would they narrow their road? Sure, I think, if they got Kursk back. However, Zelensky, by delaying, gave Putin another one last hope of trying to get Kursk back militarily. He's tried it 3 times, once on his own, at least once with the help of the North Koreans, which may have turned out to be counterproductive, and I believe the other time on his own. So this is his 4th try, and the Ukrainians quite remarkably have held him off each time. Just like he's tried to take Kharkiv, that's the city right here, the city I love because I work there. He's tried to take Kharkiv, I don't know how many times, and not been able to do it. I thought he might try to get Kharkiv, but I think that's too hard. I think he must have made a choice between the two and said, it's easy. Well, first of all, it's easier maybe to get back Kursk. It's more defensible. I mean, he might even say, yeah, well, I'll give you a ceasefire. I'll give you a ceasefire in Ukraine, but I'm not giving you a ceasefire in Russia. I'm throwing you out of my country. Of course, then they would say, well, you're in my country, and you'd go back and forth. I'm hoping that, a week ago, he wouldn't have had a chance to take Kursk back. I hope he's smart enough to realize it's a lot bigger than he's going to get Kursk back. You have to give up something for it. In order to make a good agreement, in order to make an agreement that I think Trump can bless, he's going to have to give something back. So why not let it be Kursk, right? But I think that's what's going on in the Kremlin right now. And I think I don't know who's going there to sell it to him, but I'm sure we'll be sending one of the crew to sell it to him. Probably they should figure out who has the best relationship with Putin and Lavrov. Lavrov is someone I think Putin would follow, has tremendous respect for. And without looking like it, they need this war over too. The Ukrainians delivered a pretty tough blow to them yesterday, and they returned it. I mean, but again, you got to be saying to yourself, these are people that don't have to die. So let's see. Let's just keep our fingers crossed that there's an end to this thing. So shall we take a break?
Let's take a short break, and we'll be right back after these very important messages.
U.S. Army Major Scott Smiley paid a high price serving our nation. Scott was leading his platoon in Iraq when a blast sent shrapnel through his eyes, leaving him blind and temporarily paralyzed. Scott would become the first blind active duty military officer before medically retiring years later. Thanks to friends like you, the Tunnel to Towers Foundation gave Scott and his family a mortgage-free, specially adapted smart home. Show your support for America's heroes now. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers.
Are you ready for some action?
I'm ready for action.
Get the Elite TV plan only through the portal. 218 channels, and it's only $69.95 a month.
Wow.
Including your free portal.
That's cheaper than everyone else.
Your favorite sports, movies, news, even daytime dramas. We're talking about ESPN, OAN, Newsmax, channels you can't get anymore in certain areas.
Compared to the competition, this is a way better deal.
Endless selection. Not to mention all the free music channels. There's over 700 premium and classic movies all ready to go.
Wow.
Plus, they got catch-up TV that allows you to go back and watch what you've missed or want to watch again. Cut your cable in half and get twice as much for free.
Way more channels for half the cost.
After the first year, the subscription then drops to $57.95 monthly, where you change or upgrade anytime. Go to QUXNow.com and get yours today. Use promo code RUDY. Act fast.
To celebrate the new year, we're having the biggest sale ever on overstock clearance and brand new products. For example, save 60% on our Goose Down comforters, the best comforters ever. They go perfectly with our MyPillow bed sheets and duvet covers. Save 25% on our brand new kitchen towels. They're made with the same technology as our famous My Towels. Our initial quantities are extremely low, so get them now before they go. Our seasonal flannel sheets are finally in. You save up to 50% and they sell out fast every year, so order now. They're truly the best flannel sheets you'll ever sleep on. Or save up to 80% on all our clearance items. And this is where it gets even better. For a limited time, your entire order ships absolutely free. So go to MyPillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use that promo code to get deep discounts on all MyPillow products. And for a limited time, your order...
This is Rudy Giuliani back with you with America's Mayor Live. The situation in Syria is getting extremely complicated. So we reported to you yesterday on a story that either hasn't been covered or has been covered over, that in Syria, the new government, the government that overthrew Assad under the leadership of President Ahmad al-Sharia, has been for some time pounding the Alawite area of Syria, which also includes the place where most of the Christians are. And in the process of eliminating the so-called Saddam supporters, he was an Alawite, and that's where his major support came from, him and his family, which were who controlled that area for 50, 60, 70 years. And the government, now remember, this isn't really a government. This is one terrorist group replacing another. The group that took over up until, well, right now are a terrorist group designated by the United States. The so-called leader of the group theoretically left the group a year ago, and there is a tremendous doubt about that. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is the name of the group, and it's labeled and described as a terrorist group by us. Europe, of course, has already lifted that because Europe will lift anything if they can trade with somebody, and they have no principles. But we haven't done it yet. Even the Biden administration didn't want to accept immediately that this group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, had actually become a non-terrorist group. They took note. For example, they have not abandoned their pledge to destroy the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Now, as far as I know, the president, Ahmad al-Sharia, has not done that, or the major leaders who are speaking for the party. Their attack in on the Alawites has been brutal and unrelenting. They're just slaughtering them in the streets, and they are killing many Christians as they do that, because they see the Christians as being more aligned with the Alawites than with them. And there's a real fear there may be a genocide that's involved here, and nobody is calling them to account for it, like the European countries and the United States should say. And they're trying very hard to convince us that they're not a terrorist group anymore, that you're doing just the opposite. And somebody should speak up for the Christians, particularly Christian nations. How about that, huh? Now, the Kurds control a portion of Syria that is, I guess you would say, in the northwest corner. And it overlaps with the Kurdish area to some extent in Iraq. And there's always been a fear among the Iraqis and the Turks that the Kurds would try to create their own country because they are in several different countries, and the geography is pretty much overlaps. But today, the Kurds made a deal with the terrorist government, and they're going to be part of it. So now that leaves two on the outside, the Alawites and the Christians. Now, this may mean that they want to incorporate them in the government. I don't know. It didn't sound that way. It doesn't look that way. It seems to me their answer here is genocide. And they're getting away with it because the press is so enamored of the fact they got rid of Saddam. Anybody must be okay. This group could be just as bad or worse than Saddam, which is usually the case in the Middle East when we do these things. So we have tremendous leverage here. Honestly, Europe doesn't right now, unless they start putting up armies in Europe. None of these people care what Europe thinks. If Trump had somebody go visit al-Shura and tell them cut it out. You ever want to? I know you're working real hard to try to escape that terrorist label, legitimately or illegitimately. But it's not working if you're killing a bunch of Christians. And really, even the Alawites. I mean, let's stop this. Let's stop this nonsense, because this is what made Iraq go wrong. We tried to get rid of all of Saddam's people, and we got rid of everybody that could run the railroad. And we had a disaster there. How a nation like ours could make that mistake is hard to believe after the magnificent job that we did in our occupation of Japan, Italy, and Germany, where we kept most people, except the top people. I'm not saying I love doing that. I'm not saying that I wouldn't feel very uncomfortable having people who might have supported Hitler or might have supported the Japanese attack on us or might have supported Mussolini. But I also have to bow to practicality, which is you need a railroad engineer to run a railroad. And unless the guy was a really way out there supporter of the murderer, and maybe you got to chalk it up to ordinary people, just ordinary people. And and they do what they're told. I generally don't like that. I mean, if we're talking about when you tell me about the FBI, I don't buy this. It's just one little group. I don't believe it's the whole FBI, but it's a lot more than one little group. And I think FBI agents who do barbaric things like put shackles on white-collar criminals, put shackles on Peter Navarro, they know better not to do that. But FBI agents are highly skilled people. They're college graduates. They're selected very carefully. They better be really very substantial people. They got more power than most individual human beings. They can take away your liberty. Most people that work in a municipal situation can't take away your liberty. They don't have that kind of power. The whole point of this is it'd be a lot more comfortable looking at this group that said it isn't the terrorist group that we've known it to be for 30 years, but it's changed now that it's in power, if they were being inclusive instead of murderous. And in that section of Syria, they're being murderous. So if you want to know where this is taking place, the Alawites, we go back on the map here, that's Syria. You can see way down here is Israel. Israel's down here, okay? Right down there. Let's see if I can get it. Israel's right down there, okay? And here's Syria. and Amman is Jordan, right there. Okay, if you remember the Bible story from yesterday about Paul the Apostle, this is where he was headed, Damascus, when Jesus knocked him off his horse and said, "Saul, Saul, why dost thou persecute me?" And that created probably the single greatest missionary in the history of Christianity, Paul, who converted all of the East. And he stopped being a persecutor and murderer of Christians, and he became their biggest supporter and their biggest missionary, and eventually died for the church. But as you go east from here, from Damascus, all the churches that were established by Paul, including the Christians up here. This is where the Alawites are, at one of the places they are, and Latakia, for example, right there. And this is also where the Christians are. The Kurds who made the deal with Damascus are over here. You might recognize some of the names like Tikrit and Kirkuk, Mosul, which is in Iraq. So you see, the Kurds are like here. You see how easily you could put a country together there? If you took the Syrian side and you took the Iraqi side and you made it Kurdistan. Well, that's what they want to do, and that's what creates the problem. But they made a calculated decision, the Kurds did, to go in with the government. And I think they did that because they've got a different focus. Their focus is Iran. Iran wants to eliminate them. They have, I'm sure, convinced themselves that with regard to Iran, they have a reliable ally in Damascus, in the new government in Damascus, that these people are going to remain anti-Iran no matter what. Otherwise, they made a terrible, terrible mistake. But in doing that, they left the Christians, the Alawites, and a couple of other groups, the Druids, they left them sort of on the out. So we'll have to see what's going to happen. But the United States should intervene for at least for the point of view of saying, cut it out. Cut out trying to kill all of the former terrorist, whatever they were, facilitators, and suddenly stop killing the Christians. After all, you know, we're Christians. We don't take it too well. So let's go to Ali Reza Shefsardari, who is effectively the director of all the activities of MEK and the American organizations that are separate from it but work with it. And it's quite a group that's separate from each other but tied together. I mean, it's very complicated. Some are closer than others. But when you talk about the NCRI, that's it's a very disparate but very, very close group. Isn't that right?
Good day, Mayor. First of all, it's always a great pleasure to be on your show. And it was also a very great pleasure to see you in Washington, D.C. Of course,
I thought it was a great rally, by the way.
Yes, we should definitely talk about that. But of course, as you said, the National Council of Resistance of Iran is actually the parliament in exile, headquartered in Paris, but has offices around the world, including in Washington, D.C. It actually encompasses political groups, organizations, personalities with different political backgrounds, but they're all focused on bringing down the regime, overthrowing the regime in its entirety. None of the factions within the regime has any legitimacy whatsoever. it wants to establish a republic form of government where the vote of the people counts, and it wants to separate religion from state. And it's headed by a woman, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, the president-elect of the NCRI, who has introduced a 10-point platform based on gender equality, freedom of religion, freedom of political parties, freedom of speech, the free market economy, peace in the Middle East, and a non-nuclear republic Iran. And also it has elements within Iran. The main organization within NCRI is actually MEK, as you made reference earlier. The MEK has very large presence, has had over the years inside Iran, and they have the forces on the ground known as the resistance units. And those are the ones who are confronting the Revolutionary Guards, are acting as engine for change inside Iran, and confronting the IRGC in order to show the Iranian people that the regime and the IRGC are not 10 feet tall and they're very vulnerable. The goal is to bring down the Ayatollahs and impact the whole region.
Now, right now, there's a pending, and with all the things going on, it's hard to keep track of it. You need a chart, the different wars and disputes. And there's a pending offer to the regime to negotiate, although they've indicated in advance that they will not negotiate. And then the president sent to them a last minute, I'm not going to wait a long time. This got to be resolved quickly. But if you want to avoid, I don't know exactly how he put it, but I think he probably meant destruction. You've got one last chance. And it would, what do you think is going to happen with that? I mean, after all of this, I will not negotiate. We will not negotiate. Is it possible they'll negotiate?
Well, as far as the regime is concerned, their goal is to maintain their nuclear weapons program using all kinds of tricks the way they have done it so far, because the nuclear weapons program is very crucial, is one of the main pillars of this regime, because it's used as a guarantee for the survival of the regime. It's part and parcel of their policy of exporting terror. It's the other side of the coin of supporting all these proxies in the region. And they spend a lot of resources over the years, at least $2 trillion of money and cost has been used so far by the regime to get the nuclear weapons program to this place. And that's a lot of money when it comes to the country of Iran. The whole 8 years of Iran-Iraq war cost the regime $1 trillion. And now the nuclear program itself, about $2 trillion. So that's a lot. There's a lot at stake. So what the regime wants to do is that they want to maintain the program, but they want to, offer that, okay, we're open to sit down and negotiate. They have always said that we don't have a nuclear weapons program. It's all about energy, and everybody knows that this is all nonsense. Every indication on the ground is that they have a very advanced program aimed to build nuclear warheads. So what you want to do, you want to avoid falling into the trap of the Iranian regime, because after all, it's not an endless situation in terms of timeline, because come October, all of the most of the sanctions at the UN Security Council is going to expire. There is a sunset clause in that nuclear deal, and then there would the ability to snap back all the sanctions that now exists will expire as well. So you have within actually the next few weeks, to be more accurate, is the window to trigger the snapback mechanism at the UN and put back all the sanctions on the Iran regime and make them pay for their violation. So the goal of Tehran is say, okay, let's just play and let's sit down and see what we can do. This way they can drag it further. And I think Washington, the capitals around the world, has to be very, very careful not to fall into that trap. I think the president has made it very clear that he wants all of the nuclear sites of the Iran regime shut down. This is what we've said since 2015 and many years ago. And that's the only issue that you can really sit down and talk about, you know, how those sites are going to be shut down, and how the IAEA, the UN nuclear watchdog, can actually monitor the closing down of the sites, not measuring the level of enrichment of the uranium or any other issues at all. None of that should be on the table.
Well, they certainly have laid out very, very stringent conditions. In other words, in order to reach an agreement, they're going to have to forego the nuclear weapons, and they're going to have to allow basically inspections at our discretion, not theirs, or the agreement will be immediately canceled. I'm just sitting here thinking, what's the chances they agree to it and say to themselves, we snuck out of all these in the past, screwed them and lied to them, so why not agree to it and wait out Trump? Because next time we might get somebody who loves us like an Obama or a Biden.
Well, based on the experience in the past and the role that the nuclear weapons program of the regime has played within the regime, the Iran regime has already said that they're not going to give up their nuclear weapons program unless they really feel that they're, otherwise they're on the verge of collapse and overthrow. Because once they start backing down here, especially in light of what already happened in the region, they lost a lot of the proxies or allies in the region that
would you say you would know this better than anyone, but would you say they're in about the weakest condition? You know, even back in 2019 and 2020, when the accumulated protests that you guys had a lot to do with had them on what we would call the balls of their backside, they still had those proxies. They certainly had Hezbollah. They didn't have Hamas then, but they had Hezbollah, and they had the Houthis, and they had Assad in Syria, and they had, I think, even a little more of Iraq than they have today.
Yes.
So that's a lot of allies. And they already had help from China, help from Russia. So now Hamas can't help them. They can't help themselves. Hezbollah surprised me at how little a fight they put up. But they got to help Hezbollah. Hezbollah's not going to help them. Assad's gone, and they're fighting their own wars right now.
Yes.
So they're not going to help Iran. And the Houthis, at least about half of their effectiveness has been taken away from them by taking out their bases. And they're very far away. They're not the most convenient of allies. So they are somewhat on their own right now. I mean, this is the first time in a long time that it's just Iran is on its own. And the next decision is, does Iran get attacked, right? That's the final decision that has to be made. But they don't make rational decisions, Ali Reza. You know, you can pretty much, you're going to get, even with the craziness with Zelensky and the craziness with Putin, we're probably going to end up with something rational in the end. Not great, but rational. But this guy is, maybe he's insane. I don't know. He acts like he's insane. He acts like he's insane.
Well, the mullahs in Iran, unfortunately, have benefited from a lot of the concessions over the past few years, because we could have gotten the mullahs to this point a lot earlier if they didn't benefit from the concessions that was made from the outside world. Of course, the Supreme Leader Khamenei is just looking at things very, very carefully. He has a lot of experience. He's always calculating, how to keep the regime in power. But the reality shows that he's pretty much run out of options. He relied heavily on those proxies, which he described as strategic depth to the regime. They're all, as you correctly described, all gone. The population in Iran, he relied heavily on the suppression of people, trying to put them down, and yet he has faced a lot of these uprisings over the years, and he's so concerned when the next round of uprising is going to come, which they will definitely, he may not survive. That's why he is already not waiting for that, starting executions and creating this atmosphere of fear among the population. The economy, for instance, which has played a big role in those uprisings, has gone down. Nothing works. Everything is just further deteriorating. Since the time Pezeshkian came into office, that was just this past August, until now, the value of the currency has depreciated very significantly. When he took office, for $1, you had to pay 58,000 tumans. And now you have to pay, I think as of today, it's about 96,000, very close to almost double, or losing half of the value. This is disaster. And that's why I think this is a huge opportunity for the outside world. Now, the opportunity is this. Here is an explosive situation in the country, in Iran. You have an organized force on the ground who have been fighting the regime over the years, but this is the very same organization, same force that exposed all the major nuclear sites of Iran. They have those resistance units on the ground who are confronting the Revolutionary Guards, and the regime is its weakest point in the region. This is the time.
I really think, I don't know how long it's going to last, but they're on the ropes now. They haven't had anything go their way in quite some time. They've got Russia really tied up in Ukraine. I mean, they're trying to get the last bit of territory back, Kursk. So they're not going to be able to help them very much. They need Russia needs China to help them. China maybe can give them some help, but I never thought China really trusted them. China got in with them at the very end. They're there only because of their hatred for us. And I think, the minute China will jettison them as an irresponsible player. So they're on their own. And on their own, look, they couldn't win the war with Iraq. Even Israel, they go up against Israel with what Israel did to Hezbollah. I don't see it. And I see this as, I told you, I analogize it to a prize fight. You got the guy on the ropes. You don't sit down for a ceasefire.
Yes.
So let's hope.
Well, Mayor, you had a very important point during the rally. By the way, you made very key points at the rally in Washington when thousands of Iranian Americans had come from all over the United States.
Yeah, it was really inspiring.
The Capitol, and then marched after that to the White House. And you made very important point. You started by saying that no issues in the world will be resolved, including peace in the Middle East, so long as the mullahs are in power. And you showed the connection between the regime and all of the chaos. And
they'll undermine that. They'll also try to undermine any arrangement we make with China, particularly.
Exactly, with all of that. And then you talk to the audience saying that, well, this movement that has a history of fighting against the regime, you don't need anything else, really. You don't need boots on the ground. You don't need appropriation of money. You can rely on yourself and you can bring down this regime. All the United States really need to do is recognize this very fact, that this is the movement for change, and that recognizing the right of the people of Iran to overthrow the regime. And you also mentioned, I heard you doing interviews with the media, talking about the choice for the future. As Iran has only one way to go forward when it comes to people of Iran, and that's for freedom, where the vote of people counts. And you rejected any form of dictatorship. You said, which country in the world that, you overthrow a dictatorship only to replace it with another form like a, monarchical dictatorship and others. So the choice is clear. The platform is there. And you saw the enthusiasm of the people who were cheering when you were speaking. But I want to emphasize here, Mayor, I'm sure your audience know you very well over the years, but the one aspect that I think we can never emphasize the role you have played over the years.
Thank you.
In not only just highlighting the problem of the regime, which many people may do, but you have shown the solution. You always emphasize on the solution, how to end the threat of the Iranian regime.
Yeah, we have to.
Exactly. And that's the key point that you've always mentioned. And I want to commend you for that.
Well, thank you.
And I urge everyone to go on the internet, go on social media platforms, watch where Mayor Giuliani, when he addressed the crowd in Washington. It was a combination of enthusiasm, hope, forward-looking, but specific plans that you outlined. And I hope that is picked up in Washington and also in Europe.
Well, I hope so too. We're going to play a little of it, but I want to make one point that I thought of today, watching what was going on in New York with the protests in favor of the guy that supports Hamas, that the President and Secretary of State want to throw out of the country. These people are protesting, first of all, in favor of a murderous terrorist group called Hamas. You're protesting for freedom. These people were beating up cops, destroying property, burning things. Your parade, which we watched a lot of, and then we watched it together when they passed the Willard Hotel. You remember? Were you there with me when they passed the Willard Hotel and we could see them all going past?
Well, you saw our rally. It was our rally.
Yeah, but they marched. Exactly. The way the rally took place is you had the rally at the Capitol. And then after the rally, a lot of the people marched from the Capitol, kind of like with the inaugural parade would be.
Yes.
To the White House. Now, that was a beautiful march.
Absolutely.
I mean, beautiful in the sense of clean, no fires, no violence. The police were almost marching with them. The police were congratulating them. Looked like once they were finished, the streets were totally clean. Meanwhile, we got 3 in New York today. I'm in Florida. There were 3 in New York. There'll be 1 in Chicago and 1 and they'll burn things down. They'll beat the hell out of the police. I mean, all you see is they have to rip them off. So the point that I'm trying to make is you're a hell of a responsible group. I mean, you put 100,000 people together in Paris and nothing happens, except sometimes they try to come and kill you, right?
Yes,
and you're ready to take, and you're ready and have thought it out. You're ready to guide the country. What just happened in Syria is we can't tell if we improved in Syria or not right now. We got rid of Assad. I think we improved just on the mere fact that we ripped something away from Iraq.
Yes.
But in terms of the type of terrorists, we got terrorists running it now. So instead of one group getting killed, now the Alawites and the Christians are getting killed. And they were going to kill the Kurds, but the Kurds made a deal with them. Now, I think we had to do it, but we went from, sometimes we go from bad to worse. I think we went from very bad to bad in Syria. Here we have an opportunity to go from bad to good. Here we have an opportunity to actually do it the right way and have a predetermined process for getting to a democracy that will join Israel and a couple of other countries in the Middle East as the only democracies there. And the more we get, I mean, I am convinced without the Ayatollah and the reign of terror around, and with a reasonable government in Iran, you're going to get the Palestinian issue solved in a year or less. It'll calm everybody down. It'll calm Israel down. Israel's not as worried about the Palestinians as they are that Iran will nuke them. I mean, every Israeli worries about, the guy sounds like a crazy man. He seems to be like insanely focused on eliminating Israel. Who wants to live under that? So thank you very much for your efforts. I'm going to play a little. I'm going to play.
Mayor, you've always said the head of the sake of war and terror lies in Tehran, and I think everywhere you look at it, we want to make sure that all the countries in the region end up in the right side. A free democratic republic Iran is actually the prerequisite. Just imagine, Mayor, if we have an Iran that respects the vote of its people, is non-belligerent, ends the nuclear program, ends terrorism, instead, is promoting democracy.
Well, it would
what a
take,
difference it will make in the whole world, not just in the region.
yeah.
That would change the whole equation. And that's why what we're doing, what you're doing, what members of Congress are doing is not just, changing the situation in Iran. It's actually changing the whole equation in the region
100%.
and globally. And we're very close to that.
Well, thank you. Ted, you want to show us a little of as we go to break?
Yes, we love
Thank
to
you,
see that.
Ali Reza, and thank you for all
Thank
the
you.
help this weekend. You were terrific.
Thank you so much.
Here in the West, in America, where you have a lot of sick people who are your enemies and favor the Ayatollah like Obama did and like Biden did. There are a lot of people like that. They have no idea how strong you are. You're not a strong group. You're just a fringe group. You're a cult. Listen to the words of the Ayatollah. 2 years ago, Ayatollah said, maybe it was a slip. The Ayatollah said, the one group that I really fear, because they have the resources to do it and the organizational ability, is the MEK. If you were so weak, why are you the most targeted for execution and murder in Iran? Because they are afraid of you. Because they know what you did to them in 17 and 18 and 19. They know how you can ignite an entire nation. And all you need from us is our support. You don't need soldiers. You need support. Well, support, and their support in the sense of moral support, the kind of support that Ronald Reagan gave to Lech Walesa and the Pope and Margaret Thatcher when they began their movement to liberate Poland. To liberate Poland from the Soviet Union, and end result was it worked. I know the situation probably better than I know most because I've been involved with it as Ali Reza said for a long time. These people are quite capable of, with the right push, the right destabilization of the regime. They're quite capable of reorganizing that country. They've accomplished a lot of things, some of which I probably can't tell you, but the ones that I can that are public are, they're the ones who found and made sure that the nuclear scientists were interrupted, which put Iran back about 8 to 10 years and cost them billions and billions of dollars more. They're the ones who identify the locations of where these bomb silos are. They're the ones who organized 280 demonstrations in 2 years in every single city, with people having the courage to carry signs saying down with the Ayatollah, which is a shooting offense there. And they have the courage of remaining with the MEK, which is also shoot on sight or give them a trial like they, like the Biden lawfare trials. The reality is, they get a lot of pushback because Iran, probably next to China, has probably one of the best intelligence infiltration operations where they can turn news in their direction. China is the best at it. And of course, they focus their hatred on the MEK. They go around saying the MEK is a cult. It is not. They go around saying the MEK is ineffective. Then the Ayatollah slips and says things like they're the only ones who can really overthrow us. You better kill them when you see them. As we're speaking, they're probably killing some of them right now. And they know they're the only ones that can organize these protests. And I'm not going to tell you how they do it, but it's this has been going on for about 25 years, and Iran can't figure out how to stop it. After it's over, I'll tell you how. So it's there. The opportunity is there. It'd be a big jump toward liberating the world. It would give us another ally, a very appreciative ally. Now we're starting to gather them now. You know, if we had 8 or 10 really appreciative allies, then the crybabies in Western Europe, who don't produce very much and don't contribute very much, and sometimes when they go to fight, their armies are told not to fight. But we had 10 allies, like let's say 8 more Israels. China's not going to stop us, and Russia. You can see that living under communism or whatever the hell you want to call Russia, they just don't have the morale that a free army has. I mean, Russia doesn't want to fight, and Ukraine doesn't want to fight. It is a tragedy that people are getting killed. Did we show the videos of the people getting killed in Ukraine and Russia? None of that had to happen. If that little moron didn't walk out of the White House, that peace thing would have been signed a week ago. Russia would not have resumed its attacks on Kurds to try to grab a little bit back. I'm counting on the fact that Putin doesn't want to look like the spoiler here. I mean, not that he would do it because he's a good guy, but he is a very, very shrewd guy who knows how to play with the mirrors. And if they go into a ceasefire, they should be able to settle this. I think without any doubt, Zelensky will give Kursk back. I don't know. Russia will give something back. I don't know if they'll give back a portion of what is the most valuable. If they did, then you'd end up with a good agreement on both sides. And I mean, Trump is just so far ahead of Zelensky. Trump was angling for that their chance of getting more mineral land goes up by 100 to 1 if they're doing it with the United States, and Russia can get credit with the United States for doing that. Doesn't the little moron who's the product of crooked oligarchs realize that? Or is there some deal that this is going to get in the way of? Look, great people who have gone through something they never should have gone through. Maybe of course, they didn't know. Their government supported Biden. Their government supported Hillary Clinton. They did the collusion that was falsely attributed to Russian collusion. That's how I got involved in it. I got a call saying they're doing in Ukraine what they're falsely claiming is going on in Russia, and it turned out to be 100% true. So let's see if this can end it. We got a real loser elected in Canada. He wants to take on Trump, and he's flexing his silly little banker's muscles. And he's going to stand up to Trump. He's not going to give in. Does he realize that compared to the United States, they're a little pipsqueak with a very, very weak economy? Does he realize that for every dollar they cost us, we would with the same tariffs in place, we would cost them 100, and that their economy is in 10 times worse shape than ours and can't sustain this? And the idea of being able to get what we get from Canada somewhere else, possibly at a slightly higher price but a more reliable service, is not impossible. The possibility that they can get from us what they get from us, and anything close to the price that we give them, is zero. Maybe they can fulfill 25%. I'm saying that there's a difference between being a superpower and being a country that, unfortunately, at this stage, given the committed communists they had running them, and this guy here, who is a committed globalist, they are in terrible shape. Canada has been in much better shape than this, and something other than this silly elitist woke government could get them there. but not this group of World Economic Forum nitwits. Now, yeah, I mean, this guy has got to be out of his mind. The world is moving against this. The world is moving against globalism. They're moving against elitism. I don't know how you think you're going to relate to people by saying you're a political leader who's an elitist. So I know we're dealing with a jackass. He may have run two banks, one in England and one in Canada. But look at the condition of England and Canada. He sure as hell couldn't have done a good job of running the national banks in either one. Both of them suck right now. So let's listen to this banker, and let's listen to what a absolutely stupid politician he is.
I can deliver for the country, and my weakness is, people will charge me as being elitist or a globalist, to use that term, which is that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need. My weakness as a politician, I'm connected.
He's connected. Sounds like he's a guy in the mafia. He's connected. When does a democracy ever need an elitist? I thought it was a democracy. Not on the Trudeau. Trudeau ran it as an autocratic government, probably getting that from. I mean, the allegation is that Trudeau is Castro's bastard. He sure ran it like he was a communist. And this guy, I don't know what you call an elitist who. What's an elitist? Elitist is somebody who think they're better than everybody else. Does he understand language? I mean, this guy ran two banks. Don't get all impressed. I know people who run banks. Some are good, a lot aren't. And when you look at the kind of bank he ran, which was a national bank, and you look at the condition of the economy of these two countries, maybe he can find another one to screw up. But that statement is an absolutely idiotic statement to say when you're taking over as the prime minister of a democracy. This is exactly what we need as an elitist. We need a guy right now running Canada who believes he's better than everybody else. Can you believe he said that, Ted? He thinks it's a good thing to be an elitist. I mean, I don't think it's a good thing to be a globalist, but at least he could argue over that.
Yeah.
I think being a globalist, you either are a hidden Marxist or you're a tool of the hidden Marxist, and you're too stupid to realize it. He's in the second category.
Right.
Because he wouldn't have said he was a globalist.
Elitist or a globalist, to use that, or a globalist, to use that term, which is, that people will charge me as being elitist.
Well, it isn't that they charge
people will charge me as being elitist or a globalist, to use that term, which is, that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need.
We need somebody running Canada who believes he's better than everybody else. I just translated it for you. Hey, dope.
But that would be an elitist, right?
That's
an
exactly
elitist,
what it is. An elitist is somebody who believes he's better than anybody else.
And doesn't know the term elitist, right? He's kind of demonstrating that he is an elitist by the words he's using right there, right?
I have no idea if he really is or isn't an elitist. I can tell you he's a jackass.
He's certainly not elite.
But to tell people that you're an elitist when you've just taken over as the prime minister of a democracy, you got to be stupid.
Yeah. He's bragging about being
maybe
connected.
he doesn't know what an elitist is, and he is one.
Mayor, you ever brag about being connected? When you're mayor of New York, you ever go around telling people, "Oh, I know people."
I know people who know about it. The only people I know do this is the mafia. I know people who know people.
I'm connected. That's literally what he said.
That's a lot of people say. I'm connected. He's connected. You know he's connected to? Klaus Schwab. He was a big guy at the World Economic Forum. Man, they've done wonders for the world. Yeah, look at all the countries that they advise. They're all starving. They're all falling apart. They don't have a currency anymore. Oh, this European Union was a great idea. It took Germany from the most productive country in Europe and one of the most productive in the world to middle. And they're going down. They got another guy who's just like him. He's just smart enough to not say that he's an elitist, but he acts like one. And he wants to make a deal with the communists. Well, how about another short break? Sure. And we'll be right back.
To celebrate the new
Here we are, pretty much at the beginning of the process here at this pristine, I call it a laboratory. It's not like a factory, it's like a hospital. This is the beginning of the process for roasting. Deep grain, very good quality. Most people don't use this quality. We deal with small farmers because they like to know who we're dealing with. They give us the highest quality, all organic, non-GMO. You should know all Arabica beans, no Robusto, all Arabica. They're going to go into the roaster and it'll get roasted for about 20 minutes or so. Oh my goodness, look at these. My goodness. You're going to want to specially order these. This is what goes into Rudy's coffee.
This is Rudy Giuliani back with you on America's Mayor Live. So let me catch you up on the things that, if you look at the board there, I don't know, I bet you don't know what those are. That is the elite, high technology, artificial intelligence created new way that the Russians are transporting into Ukraine. They're using horses and jackasses. The horses, horses they had, the jackasses came from the Democrat Party. They sent them over. Schumer probably sent over the most.
Schumer can carry a box of it like that.
But isn't the jackass the symbol of the?
It is.
You know, jackasses are really actually very nice animals, but poor things. I would like to liberate them from the Democrat Party. But you know, a lot of people think this. That the reason for this is that Russia's running out of tanks and trucks. I cannot believe. So I don't believe that I don't believe that 1 million Russian 900,000 Russian troops were killed in Ukraine. I think they only sent 700,000. Who are the other 200,000 that got killed? It would mean every troop that went to Russia was killed plus 200,000 more.
Some of them were killed twice.
Now on the Ukrainian side, they say the number is somewhere between 60 and 90,000. That would mean that basically they kill Russians 10-1. Now, they also lost another 200 and something thousand people with civilians. But remember, they were invaded. Their country was invaded. So you are going to lose civilians.
Who can you trust? And what
I don't know.
During a war, right? Who do you, all these numbers from either side? And
the Russians probably give you a number like 3 or something.
yeah.
I mean, let's face it.
It's the middle of a war.
We got different levels of dishonest, but I mean, Putin is a monster. And they're just thoroughly dishonest, not being monsters.
Well, I think
the idea that we got like a really reliable ally there is like ridiculous. You hear these senators and congressmen get up and say, Ukraine is a great ally of the United States. What? No, they're not. They've never done anything for the United States. Maybe they're never in a position to do it. I'm not saying they wouldn't. We'd have to see. But this isn't a country like Israel. To the extent that they helped us in the Second World War, they started with Nazi Germany.
I was going to say
they were on the German side.
Russia was on our
side. And they did it as part of Russia. And they were thought to be a little too cozy with the Nazis.
Well, and speaking of the Nazis, so Goebbels in the bombing of Dresden, I think, claimed 400,000 lives lost when the number was, I think, closer to 40. So if that, I mean, wartime brings out some number, inflation here.
So probably what we should do is take the median between what the Russians say, which is 2, and
it is somewhere between 2 and 1 million.
About that.
It is,
it's somewhere between 2 and 1 million. Yeah,
but it is absurd, right?
But I'm pretty sure
I
may be wrong
at the absurdity
about this.
of it all.
I'm pretty sure the other day I'm reading this. And I keep looking at it. They've so far sent 700,000 troops to 700,000 troops. not including the 20,000 North Koreans, I think, who all killed themselves. Or
Accidentally.
no.
Accidentally.
They killed the Russians.
Russians with them, yeah.
I think the biggest kill rate maybe is the North Koreans killing the Russians, thinking they were Ukrainians.
Like you said, they're all very similar people.
So J.P. Morgan has admitted debanking conservatives. They were sued. They were sued by our friend that was at the rally with us, Sam Brownback. You met Sam on Saturday, right?
I did.
Former governor, senator of
He came over, wanted to
Kansas,
talk to you.
former ambassador under Trump, and now he runs the National Committee for Religious Freedom. And as part of the National Committee for Religious Freedom, they would fight for religious freedom all over the place, including in communist countries, particularly like China, that Chase Bank, loves. And Chase Bank took their bank account away, gave them 4 different contradictory reasons. They also had a long history of others, Donald Trump Jr., Lieutenant Michael Flynn Jr. I've had trouble with my businesses with banking when we were making a fortune. The banks do this. Saturday Night Live made fun of it, but Saturday Night Live hasn't been right in 20, 30 years. But now they did, because Chase Bank not only settled with them, set up accounts for them and others, but it's agreed to include language in its corporate code of conduct to protect customers against future incidents of political and religious debanking. The first major U.S. bank to make such a change. And Sam and the National Committee are going to run through all the banks and get that done. And that will help you as conservatives, because my goodness, if they find out you're a conservative, forget it. I mean, I've had advertisers that got calls from banks saying, if you keep advertising with Giuliani, we'll take your bank account away. I mean, I just got used to it. And how about, I can't tell you how many lawyers turned me down, not just for me, but for the president, for other people that needed lawyers, where I was trying to get them lawyers. When we had a situation in Georgia and Arizona, it was impossible. We had a guy who had to spend 2 nights in jail because he couldn't get a lawyer, and the judge in Georgia was too lazy to come off his vacation. A man's liberty didn't mean anything. This guy doesn't work very hard anyway. Imagine the judge in that case in Georgia worked for Fannie the Hoe, and that's okay. So what about Bernie Sanders? Now, I have told you for the longest time, but I don't emphasize it enough, and I should. The beginning of all this was the removing God from America. This is where it all began. Second was infiltration of the schools. And if you look at that, those are the 2 Marxist priorities. Get God out, get the parents out, because both of them know better not to have an atheistic, communist, or socialist state. They both know that socialism is violence necessarily that will happen, because it is it's a system, it's an economic and social and political system that runs against the grain of the human personality, which is to be productive and to benefit from your productivity. And if you are productive, to not feel like you're being taken advantage of and being made a sucker because other people you're working hard and you're very conscientious, but other people taking advantage of you. And then you have priorities. You have families, and you say to yourself, I don't want to take bread out of the mouth of my family to take care of all the communist bums who don't work, or socialist bums who don't work. So Marx realized he had to remove both of those things. Marx had a separate problem with God, though, and it's very intricate and very psychological. Marx had a satanic problem with God, a Lucifer problem with God, and he writes about it. He said, and he's a fan of Lucifer, because Lucifer believed that he was smarter than God, that God was arrogantly asserted he was the smartest mind, and that Marx was smarter. I'm serious. He went through a whole satanic period where he worshiped Satan because Satan had done what he wanted to do, which is for human beings to say we're smarter than God, and God is used to subjugate us to the bourgeoisie and to the oppressors. Now they call it oppressors and oppressed. Used to be bourgeoisie and proletariat. They used bigger words because they were smarter, I guess. So now we see in Bernie, who is a lifelong communist. Once again, I am willing to assert that you don't go to Russia or Cuba on your honeymoon unless you're a communist. Sorry. And you don't go there 30 times unless you're a communist, like Tampon Tim. But the other night he had a rally. And you know how they would try to play around with the numbers at Trump's rally? The old bastard had 3,500 there. Geez, I could get 10,000. Right? Right. You could get, yeah. President would get 30. But he has a transgender, I don't know the right pronoun here, a transgender. Oh, I guess transgender, now claiming to be a woman, Laura Jane Grace, originally Thomas James Gable, who is a singer. Again, don't ask me about this because I have no idea who this person is. But during the performance, sort of as the lead act for the pathetic old bastard from Vermont, she sang a song called "You're a God," also subtitled "God's D, two letters K." Your God, or God's D, 2 letters K. She sings, does your God have a big fat D, 2 letters K? Because it feels that he's F-king me. When he whips out his meat, does your world fall to its knees? Does he chew C, 2 letters T, like bubble gum, and give BW jobs like a vacuum? This is the Democratic Party. And as an observer, Robbie Starbuck, who is a good friend of ours, right, who we should have on the show on this, says, isn't it true that the Democrat Party has now become pure evil? It was when it supported slavery, so they're just returning to their roots. Another observer said, little Bernie has gone full Satan right before our eyes. What kind of singer even writes this on paper, let alone sings it in front of an audience? The thing that you're looking at, who's 44, has been performing since 1997 with her band, and she was known then as Thomas James Gable. Now, she previously performed for him in 2020, and during that, she sang a song that God is good, God is great, now get the F out of the USA. Her song was Hanging Tree. And there were many other things, which were direct frontal attacks on God and Christianity, supported by Senator Sanders. Now tell me he's not a communist with this hatred of God. So shall we listen to her or not? Yeah, let's listen to her, it, him, whatever.
Big fat dick, 'cause if God have a big fat dick, 'cause it feels like he's fucking me. Are his balls filled with lightning? Do they tingle like heaven's keys? Does your God have a big fat dick? 'Cause it feels like he's fucking me. God have.
What happened? She's an awful singer.
Yeah, terrible.
No, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you the one good thing. I don't understand a damn thing she said.
Yeah.
Wah, da, wah, 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 wah. Do you know what? Do you know one of the things that's the most important for any quality singer, even if their voice isn't that good? Pronunciation of words.
Right.
Frank Sinatra and Luciano Pavarotti shared in common the ability to pronounce words perfectly. When we were in Italy, we met with a tenor who he's a crazy guy. Remember? He's a real crazy guy, but what a voice, and every word in Italian, perfect. I can understand Italian kind of, but when they start, like when Eleonora speaks Roman dialect Italian, she just speaks beautiful Italian, rolling the R's, but I can't understand her. She talks so fast. For me to get the Italian, you got to slow it down for me. And then I can get most of it. And that's why I love Pavarotti had, and Bocelli has this too. They have the ability to pronounce every word. Bocelli, who doesn't speak to you in English when you talk to him, is uncomfortable speaking in English, is not uncomfortable singing in English. And I'm telling you, you can understand what he's saying in English because he works so hard at pronouncing every word properly. I mean, singing is an art form, not a disgusting thing that that belongs in a whorehouse. Doesn't belong in a dignified place with the United States Senate, unless the senator belongs in a whorehouse. Little Bernie, what a disgrace. And people who say, "Oh, we really admire Bernie. He really Bernie let himself get effed in the you know what in 2016. He let Hillary cheat him and never said a word. He's not a man. You think Bernie's a man? I don't. I'm not talking about gender and stuff like that. I'm talking about principles and character and courage. He just caved into Hillary's cheating him. What a piece of crap. Little useless and crazy ideas. And who knows where they came from or why he wants to undercut this country. Maybe because he's such a stupid looking little bastard. What a horrible thing to do. I mean, they're filled with him. Cuomo is running for governor of New York, the mayor of New York. He's going to reform everything that's wrong with it. And he's the reason for almost everything that's wrong with it. The crime problem in New York, you could solely pin it right on the reforms that he did in 2018. He did bail reform. There are, take it from me, nobody knows more about reducing crime in New York than me. No one's ever done it the way I've done it. No one's ever come close to doing it. There are 7,000 to 9,000 criminals walking the streets of New York who would not be walking the streets of New York if Cuomo hadn't passed the bail bill. And most of them are predatory criminals and career criminals who are doing anything from larceny to rape and murder. Adams and even Hochul have tried to change it. They can't. So you would think now that he's running for mayor, and this could be the biggest problem in New York, he'd say, gee, I made a mistake there. I'm going to try to reverse it. No, because he's an arrogant, pathological narcissist. He said, I did the right thing. I saved all those people. He did. He saved them all so they could kill all those people. So probably one of the biggest reasons for all the black people that have died of murder since 2018 is his bail law, letting them out, letting people who move up from massive assault to murder. You know how many of those we've had out on bail? You get one every day. Every decent person in New York is disgusted with it. But here's what happens in New York. The Democrats are going to vote for him. And most of them agree with what I'm saying, but they'll vote for him anyway. There's a Jewish word called Meshuggah. That's Meshuggah. But Syria's form of Meshuggah because it hurts other people. But it's not enough that he just did bail reform. He also did reduce the age at which you can be tried as an adult to something ridiculous. I don't know what it is. But right now, there's a case in Newark where a 14-year-old killed a police officer in cold blood. He's not going to be tried as an adult. He's going to be tried in private. It's not even considered a crime. He'll get something less than 20 years in prison. He'll be out, long enough to have a full active life of killing people. Oh, and just in case, Cuomo also passed parole reform because people weren't getting out on parole enough. Since then, 42 cop killers have been paroled, thanks to Andrew Cuomo. So any cop votes for him, you're playing with your life. This guy is a different kind of dangerous. This isn't, communist, and there's something seriously wrong with him. I wish my friend and occasional enemy, Ed Koch, were alive and could speak on this. A lot of people in the Democrat Party know it, but once again, the Democrat Party has become a party of unbelievable cowards. Even Fetterman, who occasionally surprises you, voted for men to beat the shit out of women in women's sports. He voted for more situations where a girl like the one who was at the the State of the Union speech can get paralyzed because a male is playing in a sport. Here's poetic justice. A couple of years ago, around Christmas time, it was leaked in the State of the Union message. The nitwit traitor who occupied the White House for 4 years announced that he was going to put a brake on immigration. He's going to set up a program where people had to you could go on an app, and then they could be waived into the United States seeking asylum. And he said it would only be 1,000 a day or something like that, or 2,000 or 3,000 or something ridiculous like that. The minute he said it, I said, don't believe him. This is so he can let communists in. So he can let the people in that really have to get in with the deals that he's made over the world that they don't want to risk. Well, I don't know how. Let's see how many came in that way. Let's see. This is called the CBP1 phone app. It was a voluntary system that if you did it, you were allowed in the country, and you were presumed to be an asylee, which meant you were going to get a hearing 5 years from now. So this got you 5 years in the United States and the opportunity to disappear. So you could kill a lot of people in that period of time. And the thought is that this is the way in which he paid China back. Kristi Noem and the president have now kept those computers, and they're using it for self-deportation. They're using it for self-deportation. Do you know that last month was the lowest level of illegal crossings in recorded history?
Lowest ever.
It says it right here. As a result, border agents saw the lowest levels of illegal crossing in recorded history last month, when roughly 8,000 migrants were caught entering illegally. Now, think about this. Are there more important things he lied about? Well, equally important. Biden, for years, would say, I can't do this because Congress won't pass the laws. And the press just wrote it. They haven't passed any laws. What did Trump do? Wave a magic wand? He just enforced. Biden did not enforce the laws, which led to approximately 70,000 fentanyl deaths a year. How does he live with it? And how do the people that covered it up live with it? I mean, I always assumed people had some level of conscience, but something with power and money at the highest levels of government can either when you're at that level of power, it can either bring out the most noble performances possible, or it can bring out the people who are evil and scummy and inadequate and amoral, immoral, and perverted. Like the Black Lives Matter thing that was put down during the to honor George Floyd, who died of a drug overdose. I'm sorry, that's what he died of. The cop didn't kill him. He's going to spend the rest of his damn life in jail. Hopefully, I don't know. Wasn't he convicted under state law? The president can't pardon him, I don't think. Would you check that? Sure. I mean, of course, Tampon Tim would never, unless he promises to do spying for China. Tampon Tim would never pardon him. So they are cleaning up the Black Lives Matter square, where people go and repeat pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon. Let me see how many cops I can kill this week. Because they say it at every turn, correct? Yes, they say it at every turn. They're cop killers. And they're crooks. And now it's been renamed Liberty Park. And one of the people writing, one of the Democrats writing, say, the only people celebrating the dismantling of the Black Lives Matter Plaza in D.C. are racist, fragile white people. No, they're not. They're people who believe in law, order, dignity. People who believe you shouldn't kill police officers. And people that believe you shouldn't blame other people for your own problems. And you should be man enough or woman enough to take responsibility for your life and your children. Or you're not worth much as a human being. The officer slain in New Jersey that we talked about, slain by a 14-year-old who may end up suffering almost nothing. Detective Joseph Azcona, who was shot in the head on Friday by a 14-year-old. They don't give you his name because we're protecting the 14-year-old so that one day he can get out of jail. He won't have a record. He can kill another cop. I don't know why we think it's necessary for us to protect people like this, and why we think it helps. But there's Joseph. Wanted you to see him again. I wanted you to pray for him and his family and for the other police officers. And his funeral will be on Friday, and we will do the best we can to cover it, because he's somebody. This is a person we should honor, not the kind of creeps that sing at Bernie the Communist rallies. Newsom, it turns out, in a new book that was written, Newsom had a choice of bailing out the water companies or the oil and or going after the oil and gas companies. So he ignored the water companies that needed to be revised and helped, and he decided to be a hero to the greenies and the climate change and go after the oil and gas thing. And it sounds like there was some kind of a skullduggery involved in this. And that's in a new book by Susan Crabtree and Jed McFadden called Fool's Gold. It basically says that Gavin Newsom isn't a human being. There's nothing there of substance. Just a lot of hair. And I'm not jealous. I'm perfectly happy with it. Well, we're going to end with a puzzle. And the puzzle is the Supreme Court has decided to take a case in which I think it's Colorado, and is it Texas? I'm not sure what the other state involved, but this is a case This is a case in which it's a challenge to a Colorado law banning conversion therapy for minors who are struggling with sexual orientation or gender identity. Kelly Childs is a Christian and a licensed therapist, and he's arguing that Colorado's ban that you can't discuss sexual orientation or gender with a psychologist who may take the viewpoint that you need therapy so that you can get over it, right? Violates the First Amendment. And it violates the First Amendment because he says it's merely talk therapy. And talk is protected by the First Amendment. And why should the state be able to cut off your ability to seek guidance on something like this if you particularly for a child, but even for an adult? I mean, you can be convinced that you're heterosexual. You can be convinced you're homosexual. You can be convinced that you really should be a different sex. But you also could be in doubt and confused about it. And if you're in doubt and confused about it, why can't you go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist who may not abide by the one truth that the state has decided is the truth? And how can the state decide what the truth is here anyway? It's too damn complicated. Every individual is different. Of course, you might take the risk of going to one who's overly zealous on either side, right? We know situations where people are now complaining that they were basically conned and bulldozed into changing their sex and regret it. Well, that's a person who's an overzealous practitioner of gender change. Now, there may be overzealous people who want to prevent it, but that's the risk you take in a country where there's free speech. This is a terrible thing to do. So the Supreme Court is going to have to decide it. They're also going to have to decide the enormously difficult question of conflict of laws, because there is a case which they haven't decided to take yet that's heading to them. I think it's New York and Texas. New York has a law similar to communist Colorado. Texas has a law similar to American jurisdictions. So a doctor in New York prescribed an abortion pill, which is illegal in Texas, prescribed in New York. Now, I have to imagine the prescription was filled. I didn't get that fact yet. I have to imagine the prescription was filled outside of Texas, because in Texas it's illegal and you can't. Now Texas wants to prosecute the doctor who did it because they say the doctor violated the laws of Texas. New York says, no, he followed the laws in New York. And he was in New York. He never was in Texas, but his impact was in Texas. Suppose, strangely, right, New York had a law that murder was fine, which it could. Cuomo could actually accomplish that if he became mayor. He came pretty close with bail and parole. And murder, you can't. They'd have a protection law. You can't prosecute somebody from New York for murder. And somebody in New York offered $1 million to a hitman in Texas to kill somebody. New York would say, no, you can't prosecute him because he never came to Texas. You can be prosecuted in places where you reach out and the effect of what you're doing is to break the law of that state. You don't have to physically be there. Physically be there creates a problem in getting jurisdiction over you, not in charging you with a crime. So now Texas wants to extradite the guy from New York, where he's protected, to Texas, where he committed a crime. And of course, Governor Hochul, who probably would have not been able to follow the first three sentences of this, much less where we are now. Hochul says, over my dead body. I have to tell you, not the first one The first case that I brought to you, the one that says that the Colorado law that bans conversion therapy for minors, so long as the conversion therapy involves only talk and no medicines and no treatments, and I don't see how you don't get. I don't see how that works with the First Amendment. I mean, First Amendment requires you to allow speech you don't agree with. Sorry, the people who feel one way, but there are people who feel another way. And a person who's going through this difficulty may need that. And who's to assume that every psychiatrist is a crazy zealot like you are? You might just be a fair down the middle a psychiatrist who says, let me figure out what the person really wants without prejudice against whether they should be homosexual or heterosexual. The second one on the choice of law is going to be much more difficult. It's a difficult question. And I got to think more about what the answer to that is. Well, we've had a really good show. And we're going to be back tomorrow at 7 and then at 8. And gosh, we got lots to cover. Very interesting to see what turns out, what Russia's answer is. I could see it going either way based on his rationale. Does he want more time to take? I mean, I think we had him a week and a half or 10 days ago, but when he got the more time, he decided, let me push a little more. And maybe God willing, he gets a setback in Kursk tonight, and he says, okay, I tried it twice, couldn't get Kursk. Why try it a third time and kill more people? Now, I don't know that Putin's got much of a conscience, and the fact that he's killing people for nothing now is going to weigh on him. My guess is he doesn't. He passes himself off as a Christian too. I don't know how that works. Well, in any event, pray for the people of Russia and Ukraine, and pray for the people of Israel for sure, our best friends, and God bless America. Thank you. It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought to us the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained, by rational principles, the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the Kingdom of Great Britain and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, for freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the ability to select the people who govern them. And he explained it in ways that were understandable to all the people, not just the elite. Because the desire for freedom is universal. The desire for freedom adheres in the human mind, and it is part of the human soul. This is exactly the time we should consult our history. Look at what we've done in the past and see if we can't use it to help us now. We understand that our founders created the greatest country in the history of the world, the greatest democracy, the freest country, a country that has taken more people out of poverty than any country ever. All of us are so fortunate to be Americans. But a great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we're able to reason, we're able to